Hello and welcome back to El Partido, yet another Spanish football podcast. But as always, just a little pinch of nostalgia and a certain air of memory lane, as we've always mentioned. I'm Nick Bell, your host for this evening, and I'm delighted to say I'm once again joined by my co-host, Paul. How you doing, Paul?
Doing good, Nick. I'm enjoying the nice weather that we're having at the moment, a rarity in these parts, but making the most of it.
Yeah, no. What was I reading yesterday? We're currently 22 days in the northwest without a drop of rain. We are 2 steps away from a drought, which is unheard of in Lancashire, isn't it? So, yeah, we'll bask in the glorious sunshine. Our guest is usually 270 days a year of sunshine, but I believe it's been raining a lot recently down on the Costa del Sol. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Matt Harrison from the Lost Boyos podcast again.
Hello. Yes, it's been quite a sunny week down in Marbella. We had a little spell of rain, but yeah, I think you can sense the summer is coming to the Costa del Sol now. I might be quite red faced because I've been for a run this evening and it's hot out there running. I will say that.
Yeah, I don't think we've been for a run today, have we, Paul?
No, not at all.
Yeah, that's not happened when the sun comes out here. I think as soon as we got onto this podcast, before we recorded, we were both talking about our exploits in getting a beer after work because the sun's out. It's the rules, isn't it? It's the rules. But yeah, I'm delighted to say that Matt's joined us once again because if you remember rightly, must be about 6 weeks ago now. How time flies when you're having fun. We built our favourite, and I emphasise the word favourite, Argentine 11 who have played in La Liga. And that actually got quite a good reaction and it made us think a little bit. And there were people who were left out who shouldn't have been left out. And, you know, we had some controversy in there. So we thought, why not bring back the concept once again? But let's build a Brazilian 11 and then ultimately let's play them against each other because I think that'd be quite a cool game. And I think we all know a little bit about, you know, Spanish football and who's played in La Liga. So I think we're going to have quite differing options as, you know, building this 11 as we go in. We've already spoken about some of the clashes we might have. So without further ado, guys, I suppose we best get into it. Let's start with goalkeeper because I've got a sneaky suspicion that when we've all been doing our research, we might have ended up with the same goalkeeper. What are we thinking?
I think you might be right.
Yeah,
there wasn't too much research to be done. I even dug deep to think I'm going to find something really cool to come here with, but I haven't.
I think we had a sort of kind of a similar problem with the Argentine 11 as well, didn't we? Because there wasn't a massive amount of, you know, goalkeepers from Argentina that had played in Spain. But I tell you what, there appears to be certainly a lot more than we have Brazilians. So, Matt, as our guest, I'll turn to you first, just so you can do the big reveal. Who are you going for your goalkeeper?
Well, you said that when we did the Argentine 11. I think, you know, as the guest, I came flying out of the blocks last time with my Herman Burgos choice. And I was like, you know, look at this guy. And you were like, oh, that's a good start to things. Here, I have very little to say. So my choice is Diego Alves, who played for Almeria and Valencia. He saved a lot of penalties. He's a good goalie. We can move on.
Yeah. I think in a summary that pretty much covers Diego Alves. Paul, I'm going to assume that you're on the Diego Alves hype train with us for this one.
I am, yeah. Cult hero, saver of 23 La Liga penalties. Yeah, Diego Alves.
Yeah, he's like you say, there's a light touch to this because when he came in to Valencia, I don't think he was the first choice. I think it was David Guetta that was the first choice goalkeeper at the time at Mestalla. But he got injured and he came in and he wasn't, you know, explosive in terms of what he was doing, but some of the records he's now got with Valencia, you know, he's the records for the most penalty saves in La Liga which is a Guinness World Record as well. Let's not forget. He saved the most amount of saves, most amount of penalties, in a single season, which is obviously quite admirable. And he also has the home clean sheet streak, which you can't say too fast, at Mestalla at 677 minutes without conceding a goal in Valencia. So, we're maybe underselling him a little bit, because for his time in Valencia, those are quite good, aren't they, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, he's a good goalie, I guess. Like, for example, when we did the Argentine one, we all picked like different goalies. They all had, I don't know, stories behind them. I know we threw up the word loco quite a lot last time. Diego Alves just feels like a safe pair of hands. And I guess when we got into other positions in this 11, there's a bit more craziness and a bit more of that Joga Bonito and things like that. So I don't know, in a way, I just wrote his name down and went, let this, he's a goalie. He's a Brazilian goalie. Although you could argue, obviously, in the Premier League, they have two of the best goalies in the world at Brazilian at the moment. So, but yeah. I dug deep to find someone else. By the way, for all my other positions, I've got lists of honourable mentions. I don't even have one here. So it's all yours, Diego. Good goalie.
Yes. That sounded a bit like that that bit in the Come Down With Me sketch. It was like, well done, Diego. You won the challenge. But obviously worth mentioning from Diego Alves' perspective, he went back to Brazil after leaving Valencia. He won the Copa Libertadores, which is no mean feat as well. And then he came back to Spain very, very briefly and joined Celta. But again, this was when he was quite, I think it was about 37 at the time, which is, not old for a goalkeeper, but I don't think he had the same desired effect in Galicia than he did in the Valencia community. So, first choice, easy peasy, nice and done. Diego Alves.
I'd like to know if anyone's listening, if they've got someone we've completely overlooked or is a cool story we don't know about. I generally would be interested if there's an alternative choice here.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be quite cool to find out. If there's like a little niche one where, someone like Dida made an appearance for Tenerife on holiday or something like that, it's not insurmountable, isn't it? But yeah, goalkeeper, nice and easy. We're probably 3 minutes ahead of schedule on this one. So it's a nice time to mention, if you aren't watching on YouTube, Matt is wearing a fantastic Brazil t-shirt on this podcast at the moment. I don't know if you want to elaborate before we get into defenders, Matt, what you are wearing.
It'll probably come up later a little bit more organic, but it's a Airport 98 Brazil t-shirt, which, as I was saying to Paul before we press record, but between my student years and my being a teacher years, I worked in Sports Direct, and it was around the time of the 2010 World Cup, and they had all these sort of themed t-shirts. So I got this with my staff discount in Sports Direct for about £15, I remember. And yeah, I've not worn it that much as I should have, actually. So I thought, well, yeah, this is the perfect opportunity to flash out the Airport 98 t-shirt.
Yeah, obviously, and I imagine harking back to that sort of like iconic advert with the Brazil team in the airport, or no connection at all. I'm not too sure, but they were brilliant. And the Brazil team were always the focus of those adverts as well, weren't they? There weren't too many where they focused on other players or other people. So, this was, we spoke last week about marketability, didn't we, Paul, of the Real Madrid side? I tell you what, you could sell the Brazil team to anyone. They were it in the noughties, weren't they? So, as demonstrated by Matt's t-shirt, clearly very marketable.
I should ask as well, I think I told you this fact, I don't know if Paul knows it or if you remember it, who directed the Nike Brazil Airport advert? I don't know if Paul knows it. It's a bit mad.
I actually don't know. No, you're gonna be surprising me here.
It was directed by John Woo.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy.
Well, that's a pub
for those people who, and for those people who don't know their films too much, Matt, what was his most famous film?
Oh God! Now you've put me on the spot. I can't think. I can't think which one is the really famous one. Go on. You know your films better.
We'll have to go. I can't remember either. To be fair,
put me on the spot there. Did he do? Oh God,
Did
Weekend.
Killer and Hard Boiled and Mission Impossible 2?
Yeah,
Mission
that's
Impossible 2. That was it.
Yeah.
Easy one. Which you can see.
Did he
with-
do? Did he do
Quickly.
that? What was that one? That was like a comedy as well. That was all in
Face Off. That's the one I was trying to think.
Cantonese. Oh, Face Off. Yeah.
Not Face Off. I knew there was a Nicolas Cage film, and I was trying to think which one it was. Of course, it's Face Off. That's crazy. That film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have embarrassed myself. Thanks. For some reason I had Rush Hour 2 in my head, which I don't know if that's borderline inappropriate. So we'll stick with Face Off and we'll stick with Mission Impossible 2 for John Woo. But yeah, fun fact about the.
Did he not do that other one with Nicolas Cage? Did he do the war film, Wind Talkers or something like that? About the Vietnam War. Anyway,
I realised I've let myself down here. His greatest work was the airport advert, so I just remember him for that.
Well, the good news is we've got ourselves back on track to start talking about defenders. We've buffered for 3 minutes, which is quite good on John Woo and Brazil Airport advert. So we can now move on to our defenders, and we'll go from right to left, because the thing is, I don't know about you guys, I haven't got any centre backs in my team, so I'm being a bit liberal with my formation. But this is Brazil; we can do whatever we want, can't we? So I've got 1 right back and 2 left backs. And I'll start with my right back. And he only made a very brief appearance in La Liga, if I'm being perfectly honest. Very, very brief. He was here for half a season. And I've gone for Cafu at Real Zaragoza.
Okay.
I don't know if anyone else has joined me in the Cafu camp.
He's written
The
on my
Cafu.
The Cafu, yes.
Yeah,
he was he was on loan at Real Zaragoza for a season. He joined from Sao Paulo just to get like a bit of a toe in European football, I believe. But following winning the World Cup in 1994, he joined Real Zaragoza on loan. He took that right back position from, I think it was Alberto Belthue, who was quite famous in Zaragoza at the time. And basically, they took turns and alternated in being the right back for Real Zaragoza. But in this season, he contributed to Real Zaragoza playing in La Liga. He contributed to their Cup Winners' Cup win back in this season as well, back in 1995. And I just think it's quite fun that one of the world's best right backs, arguably one of the best right backs ever, just had this brief cameo in Spanish football, because he never came back. Which I think is quite weird, because you'd like to think he would have ended up at, one of the big clubs, wouldn't you?
Yeah, he like you said, he is part of that Real Zaragoza Cup Winners' Cup winning team. I think, if I remember rightly, he doesn't play in the final, which is the final.
No, we didn't know.
The famous Naeem from the halfway line against Arsenal. But yeah, I think if he'd been in La Liga a bit longer, he is certainly one of the best right backs, certainly in the conversation as the best right back of my lifetime. So I can see why he's a candidate, and that's sort of why I wrote him down as an honourable mention, but didn't get in my team.
So who's in your team then?
Who
have you gone for at right back?
I've got another film director reference here, because when I remembered Celta Vigo had a right back called George Lucas. So I thought that was quite fun. I can tell you what films George Lucas did, but we'll leave that there. Belletti was really close as well. Scored a Champions League, Champions League winning goal in the final. So there's obviously caveats attached to this. We won't talk about off the pitch stuff here, but for me, the greatest right back, I think he's better than Cafu of my lifetime, Dani Alves. Just one of the greatest ever. I think
he's the most decorated player of all time, isn't he?
I think he's been pipped by Messi now, but only just. But he certainly was. Yeah, I think he's got 41 trophies overall. I would argue in that sort of first Pep team, the one the sort of with Henry and Eto'o and Messi up front. Messi was obviously the best player in the world then, and obviously was finding his feet as the best player in the world. I think Dani Alves was the second best player in the world at that time. He was unbelievable that season. He just had this energy up and down. Just loved the way he crosses a ball. he sort of wraps his foot around it like really perfectly. He always looked like he was having fun. Yeah, I just think he's like one of the best. I think he's obviously it's been a few years, and obviously his reputation is certainly tarnished, to say the least, by things off the pitch. But as a footballer, as a pure footballer, I think his sort of legacy's been sort of forgotten a tiny bit. So yeah, and obviously, like at the same time, there was a bit of a Dani Alves or Maicon debate, and obviously Maicon was world class until Gareth Bale put him in a taxi or pretty much finished his career, didn't he? Those two games against Inter Milan, but I just couldn't see it. I think as a technical footballer, and obviously Dani Alves was great at Sevilla as well, and obviously Pep Guardiola is his thing is coaching players and making them better, and he just took him to another level. So for me, I think if I was picking my just not even Brazilians in La Liga 11, if I was picking my certainly players of my lifetime 11, Dani Alves would probably be my right back anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think his time at Sevilla as well was very interesting because he a few players burst onto the scene the way he did, and he immediately got the attention of Barcelona. And like you say, Pep coached him into being one of the greatest players, in the world, and that's why he is so decorated, regardless of the fact he was in that Barcelona side, regardless of the fact he went to, PSG, for example. But yeah,
and also obviously that Barca team I mentioned, the front three, and Samuel Eto'o was sort of out on the right. Really, I know he played centre, and then him and Messi sort of swapped. But Samuel Eto'o is not a right winger, so Dani Alves had that whole right side to himself and seemed to dominate that whole right side by himself effortlessly.
Yeah, you could say that he was someone who helped birth the movement of, that transition from being a right back to a right wing back, a more attacking force, which is you definitely see a lot more of in today's football. I think we've kind of gone full circle now because we're all kind of going, oh, I'd love to see a proper right back again. I'd love to see Steve Finnan reincarnate, whereas I think Dani Alves really helped give birth to that, new system for a fullback, which, was never really a sexy role. Paul, are you going to go with Cafu or Dani Alves, or have you got a different option for us?
So, and I'm going to just say this to make sure that everybody knows this going forward, that I have picked this entire 11 that I've gone with, that I picked because I found them the most enjoyable to watch, entertainment-wise, skill-wise, bit of flair, because obviously the Brazilians. Not necessarily because of what I think of them as people or off the pitch. And some of them were excellent pantomime villains, people that you loved to hate in a way. So I was debating whether or not to include Dani Alves because of some of the off-the-field issues, but then I saw a BBC article that said that earlier this year he's fully acquitted. So I thought, okay, that's enough for me. We'll keep it to the football. Easy. So Dani Alves is actually my pick as well. And I think you're right. It's that explosive factor and changing the right back position, making it. He was unplayable at times. Like it was like having two wingers on one side, wasn't it? It was the power going forward and the whip on the ball as well. Excellent player to watch.
Yeah, and the way that he could interchange with that midfield as well, no matter who it was, whether it was Xavi and Iniesta, whether it was Busquets or Rakitic at a time as well, he was just, like you say, Paul, absolutely unplayable at times and unstoppable as well. And that's the reason why everybody, sort of paid attention to what Dani Alves was doing. He's probably everyone's first signing on FIFA and stuff like that. He broke the mold for a right back for me. And obviously it's a shame that, his antics off the field have maybe tarnished it, like you said, Matt. But as a footballer, he's definitely one of the best. But I think I've been outvoted on the right back position then because you've both gone for Dani Alves. So I'll wave the white flag for Cafu. That's fine. It was only a 19-game stint, so I suppose we can't go too deep into that one. I'm going to open the floor to you guys for centre-backs because, like I said, I've now got 3 defenders and 2 of them are left backs and one that I'm doing as a makeshift centre back. So I'll let you guys argue the floor for your centre backs. Paul,
I can't. I have 2 left backs as well.
We've gone very liberal with it. Well,
there wasn't a great deal to choose from. I will say I did look deeply into the options at centre half, and there was a choice between Luis Pereira, who was one of the first, and I think he's now the president of Atletico B, and the other one was Eder Militao, and I'm just not going to pick Eder Militao.
No,
and that was it. So, or Felipe from Atleti, but no, I just couldn't choose any of them. So Matt, I'll have to pass it on to you for centre halves.
Okay, I do have two centre halves. So one of them is probably the second centre back's the one I struggled with the most. So I went in the end for Edmilson. He did score on YouTube the 35th best goal in Brazil World Cup history, his overhead kick in World Cup 2002. He was at Lyon at the time. I remember just liking him at Lyon, and he went to Barcelona, won a Champions League. He was a good centre back in that right guard team, not flashy. Obviously, there's a few more playboys in this team, and he's apparently a devout Christian. So I thought he'd be a nice character to have a centre back. But to be honest with you, that was my brother mentioned when I said I was doing this when we were recording Lost Boyos last night. He brought up Miranda, and I thought, oh yeah, that'd been perhaps a better one. I do like Edmilson, and yeah, there was only one choice for me, and Paul's just mentioned him. Is Luis Pereira, who is one of the greatest centre backs in Atleti's history, let alone one of the greatest centre backs in the history of Brazilian football. So I'll be honest with you, until I moved to Spain, I can't really say I knew that much about him. I sort of remember like watching lots of videos. Like my brother had old World Cup videos when we were kids. And in one of them, I think in the 1974 World Cup, Niskins gets wiped out by this Brazilian centre-back who gets sent off. And it turns out to be him, I've learned over the years. But yeah, he moves to Atleti in the 70s. He's signed by Luis Aragonés when he sees him play in a tour for Palmeiras. And I think they beat Real Madrid. And Aragonés said, I think they take two of them, actually. They take Luis Pereira, and I think the guy's name's Lavinia, who's a striker or certainly an attacker. And yeah, that's it's that sort of post-Franco time in Spain where obviously sort of Barcelona went a bit Dutch and Real Madrid went a bit German and Atletico Madrid went very South American. And, it's a bit of a golden age for Atleti, considering obviously they're always up against it with their crosstown rivals, but they do win the 76 Copa del Rey with Luis Pereira very much prominent in that team. And then they win the league in 1977. There's a great story because they win the league at the Bernabeu as well, which is great. And there's a story he tells where someone throws a can of beer at him and he just picks the beer up, leans on the post and starts drinking and celebrating. He was quite a nice one. He becomes club captain after that. So, he's had an impact. But the thing I like about him and, this, I suppose, with this Brazilian team in a lot of places, but more so at centre-back and in defence, we want a bit of swashbuckling. He is a swashbuckling centre-back. There's stories of Luis Aragonés shouting, where's he going? What's he doing? And eventually, I think that's what leads to him leaving Atleti. And he does go forward a little bit too often, but he gets 17 goals in 171 appearances for Atleti, which for a centre back is pretty good going. And yeah, I think like Paul said, I don't know if he still is the president of the B team, but he has done, like, he's been president of the B team in the last few years. He's been like a sort of ambassador. He's like had some link with helping the club source South American players. So yeah, and he's quite old now, but he's still alive. He still does. I think he might live in Madrid still. He seems to do lots of interviews, which is how I came across him in a Marca article a few seasons ago. And yeah, he's just an Atleti legend. And also, there wasn't that many other choices at centre back for Brazilians. So for me, if we're having a centre back, even if it's just one, it's this guy.
Well, I think I can say I'm quite convinced because I think my only other centre-back I had in until the 11th hour was Fabio Rochenbach at Barcelona, who I probably, honestly remember more of his time at Middlesbrough than I do at Barcelona. I think he was only there for a couple of seasons, but
also a midfielder, I would have said.
Oh, see, I had him down as a centre back for a while, but I can see he was a number 6, wasn't he, at Borough, if I remember rightly? So,
Yeah.
A bit like Ed Milson sort of played centre midfield a little bit. I think Ed Milson might have played midfield quite a lot when they won the Champions League, actually.
I think a few Brazilians had that in them as well, because you could say the same about, Thiago Motta and Fabinho and people like that. Obviously, Motta, famously ended up turning out for Italy, but he was Brazilian by trade, I suppose. But
one more thing on Luis Pereira, I had to mention this. Obviously, South Americans love nicknames. I've got to mention his nickname. When he was in Brazil, he played for the General Motors Junior team, and they nicknamed him Chevrolet. Great name.
Nice.
Is that the Brazilian version of Rolls Royce?
That is the decisive point, I think.
I don't know if that nickname lasted when he got to Atleti, but who cares?
Oh no, I'm pretty much sold on that one then. So we've got one centre back, and you've already kind of alluded to it. I think the consensus and the fun part for us will be is if we have 3 defenders. So we've got our right back, we've got our centre back. Let's have a little look at left back, because I believe me and Paul have turned up with about 10. I think you've mentioned one of my first ones, Paul, already, and that was Felipe Luis for Atleti. And, he just strikes me as like one of the most efficient left backs in the traditional sense of a left back as well, ever. Obviously, he was big part of, Cholo's team. He's won, I think he was 2 European trophies under Simeone as well, across 2 different stints. He's a La Liga champion. He's a Copa del Rey winner. And he just never looked like he was nervous about anything. He just always looked like he was, in control of things. And he was a proper enforcer in a side that was really, really physical, which, again, when you look at how we spoke about Dani Alves, you wouldn't really see Luis in that mold, would you? If we're being perfectly honest, as a left back. But I think for me, he just has something about him, and I believe he is the heir apparent as well to Simeone at the moment. I don't know if you've heard these rumors, but
his managerial career is really going well, isn't it? Yeah.
So he's got a bit of everything about him, hasn't he? But did you have him in your side, Paul? Because I know you mentioned him, but did he make your list?
He didn't make the final cut, and like I said before, that's because I put a pantomime villain in instead of him. However, he is somebody who I have a great appreciation for, and I actually feel like for him, a really bad point in his career was going to Chelsea. It kind of disrupted his flow a bit, didn't it? But he came back to La Liga. So, do you want me to tell you who I've gone with then? Who the left backs are?
Yes.
Okay, so
who's your villain?
My villain is Marcelo, because I could not stand him whenever he was playing on any team that I wanted to beat Real Madrid. There was something so frustrating about him, but he was actually excellent. If you watch him, he's got it all. He's got the shithousery. He's got the yellow cards. He scores some all right goals from outside the box as well. One of the most decorated, but so he's the pantomime villain that I've put in there. But the other one's Roberto Carlos, and I don't know if that's just going to be unanimous.
Yeah, I think in terms of when we look at the parameters for this, and we go, we're picking our favorite. I think Marcelo, is a really good footballer. He does have that mean streak to him, and some of his goals from left back were absolutely insane. But you don't hold a candle really to the personality that Roberto Carlos is. And
No.
Matt, I'm looking towards yourself on the camera now. I'm assuming that you have also got Roberto Carlos at left back in your choice.
Yes, I have. But I do generally think if I was to do a top 3 best left backs of my lifetime, they'd both be in there. It was not as clear cut as you think. I think initially I had Marcelo ahead of him. I think then I just sort of, maybe because of more recently biased. I think Marcelo's, I think you really said he's quite a good footballer. He's a brilliant footballer, Marcelo. What a brilliant passer, good cat. He seemed to get better as he got sort of towards the end of his career as well. But yes, like for everything he represents, and obviously, I'm wearing the Airport 98 t-shirt. I was 10 in France 98. I was 9 in Le Tournoi when he hit the famous free kick, the swerving one against France. For everything he represents, you said earlier that Dani Alves was perhaps, a forerunner to what a modern fullback is. Then Roberto Carlos is obviously 15 years ahead there, really, isn't he? On the left side, just a brilliant footballer, and
it's got to be him, hasn't it?
yeah. But I do say it wasn't as close as you. I wasn't as clear cut for me as perhaps you two said it was, but it had to be him.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I managed to get them both in is because I didn't have a centre half, so I don't know which one of those three between Alves, Marcelo, and Roberto Carlos would actually stay back. But I've compensated for that in the midfield, as you may see.
I'd also say with Roberto Carlos, I think me and my brother spoke about this, and obviously we're of a similar age. We're pre sort of YouTube and rolling sports coverage or football coverage. I always remember, I remember the Tournoi goal. That was quite easy to see, but there was like these sort of, one of them's going to come up a bit later as well. There was these certain goals which you'd sort of hear about on the playground, but obviously you couldn't go home and just Google Roberto Carlos goal. And like one of them, for example, I always remember is, have you heard Roberto Carlos has scored from like the corner flag with a volley against Tenerife? And you sort of just had to hope it turned up on TV one day on some, I don't know, Football Mundial on Sky Sports. And so I always associate him with this sort of mythology. And then obviously when you did get La Liga football on Sky Sports a bit more, he was sort of hitting his peak then. And the other thing I was thinking about this week with him was there was this cool thing to say where you'd go, oh, actually, he's not that good at free kicks. But he really was, because everyone scored that one. But I think he scored like 40 in his career, which is a lot.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking, did he end his playing career at that Russian side, Anji Makachkala?
He managed them as well, if I remember.
Did he?
Right. Yeah.
They were the ones who the town that the club was from was too rough for the players to live in, or something, wasn't it?
It was some remote part of Dagestan, if I remember rightly. So they actually ended up like flying in from Moscow to the home stadium, and I think eventually got a bit too rough, and they ended up playing the games in Moscow more often. And then I think the owner got bored, and it ended with him, didn't it? But they had that was kind of like the first.
It was really bizarre, wasn't it? Because didn't they also signed, like, they had Roberto Carlos, and I think did they sign Chris Samba as well from Blackburn?
I think they had Samuel Eto'o.
Yeah, Samuel Eto'o as well. Yeah, Yuri Zhirkov for the home factor as well. So it was quite a decent side until it all went a bit sour for them.
I think Roberto Carlos's last game was, didn't he play for a pub team last year in some sort of I can't remember, it's like a Coca-Cola or some big advertising, and you could win Roberto Carlos playing so some, I don't know, team in Lancashire or something for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, such is, like you say, we look at how these footballers and what the footballers get paid now. The fact that some of these players are having to do that kind of stuff maybe says more about that the level of wages they were on than they are now. I'm pretty convinced that Roberto Carlos is the left back. I think the sadder thing from my perspective, and surely maybe my questionable football taste, is I had neither Roberto Carlos or Marcelo as my other left back.
I'm quite curious.
So just to throw it into the mixer, but does anyone want Fabio Aurelio from his time at Valencia?
Do you know what? I liked Fabio Aurelio a lot when he was at Liverpool, actually. I think that was a sort of underrated spell of his career. But I like Fabio Aurelio.
Yeah, like I say, we're talking trophies that Roberto Carlos and Marcelo won. Fabio Aurelio won 3 trophies whilst he was at Valencia and was a Champions League runner-up. He was signed by Rafa Benitez after watching him at the Sydney Olympics on a 6-year contract, which I would never have thought of, because he didn't actually make that many appearances for Valencia over a 6-year stint, compared to what a lot of other players probably did at the same time. But I just thought he was quite a fun introduction to that. So Roberto Carlos it is. We'll go for that one there. So we've got our back three there now. We've got our goalkeeper, which is Diego Alves. We've got Dani Alves at right back. We've got Luis Pereira in the middle. And then we've got Roberto Carlos at left centre back. which I think is looking quite fun. Let's move into the centre midfielders then, because I'm sensing here that we may have a bit of a mix. So I've gone for a flat four in my midfield. Paul, have you done something differently? You've alluded to defensive midfielders.
Yeah, I've had to, because whenever we do these teams, you want to pick like your favorite players, but then there's bits of it where you're like, I've got to have some semblance of football smarts to it as well. So I have gone for two central midfielders. One I like a lot more than the other. In fact, the other one I've just purely put in just because of funny, really. The shithousery aspect of it. So, do you want me to tell you the names?
Yep, go on then.
Okay, so for a bookie's favourite to get a yellow card, I've gone for Casemiro. Purely because, if I've got Dani Alves and Roberto Carlos flying up the wings, and I was going to leave Marcelo, but obviously we're leaving just Luis Pereira exposed. You need somebody to break up the play on the counter-attack. And the other one I've gone for, thinking back to a few podcasts ago, when we covered Depor, I've gone with Mauro Silva.
That's a good choice, actually. I didn't think about him. Tell us a bit more about him, Paul. That sounds like quite an interesting choice. Casemiro is...
He's Casemiro's Casemiro, isn't he? No, well, 350 appearances or thereabouts, maybe a couple more. 3 La Liga titles, Champions League is... one La Liga title and 2 Copa del Reyes, but 3 Super Copa Españas. 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, that's it. The big one, the medium one, and 3 of the small ones. That's it. Yeah. Cornerstone of the makes a nice pyramid on his trophy cabinet. Anyway, he's absolute cornerstone of the Depor side. Very intelligent player. Quiet leader. You didn't necessarily see him sort of yelling at his teammates or cajoling at the team, but you could see him running games. I think it's going to sound like bizarre for me to say this, but like I think back to David Moyes' Everton. This is the most bizarre comparison you'll get for this Depor team. But like if you think to David Moyes' Everton, he had like Jagielka and I can't remember who the other big tall centre half was that were quite vocal. But then you also had Mikel Arteta that was quietly pulling the strings in the midfield. You never saw him like yelling or anything like that. Mauro Silva was quite good at just quietly directing the play, and also he could do a bit of the the dirty work of getting stuck in as well. But yeah, I just think that Depor team doesn't win the league without him, and he's 350 appearances by being consistently good as well. Not necessarily a standout player in every game like man of the match appearances, but just consistent.
I put it in my honourable mentions, and I wrote one thing next to him that I remember. Like obviously, I've been in Galicia quite a lot, and I always remember walking around Santiago de Compostela, and you do see a lot of Depor fans and Depor shirts and other like sort of towns around there, like Ourense. And I remember one day just walking around, I think it was Santiago, and every Depor shirt I saw had Mauro Silva on the back. They all had these retro Mauro Silva shirts. So he's definitely a popular guy up there, considering obviously he's not the flashiest player in that Super Depor team. And I think you listed his trophies there, Paul. I was trying to remember. I think he was part of the '94 winning World Cup team as well. I think so. He's got that on.
It's the right age for it. Yeah.
I think he was. I'm just
on top. That can stick on top of the old trophy cabinet there, and
with Super Coppers.
He wasn't in my team, but I also did write in the honourable mentions would fit great in a David Moyes side.
Listen, of the bizarre comparisons, that is up there, isn't it? I think To
be fair, my mind went that. When you were talking about it, went, who was Phil Jagielka's partner at Everton? And I've got 2 names in my head, and it's Joseph Yobo, but I don't know if that was before Jagielka.
No, he was.
And then Sylvain Distin. And I think I've got that right.
Of course, yeah.
I think the 3 of them sort of crossed over a little bit. I think Yobo left as sort of Distin was finding his way in.
Yeah.
What a great side. Matt, I'll come to you for your... Have you gone for 2 centre midfielders, or have you gone for a trio?
Sort of. I've pretty much gone classic a number 6, a number 8, a number 10. My number 8 is arguably a bit of a number 10 as well, but got a bit more legs than the one I've chosen for my number 10. So just sticking with the sort of defensive midfielder theme, I feel really sorry for him these days. I think he gets overlooked for what he'd done before. I've picked Casemiro. I think Casemiro is a brilliant footballer. As you know, I've sort of praised Marcelo, Roberto Carlos, and Casemiro. I don't really like Real Madrid, so just in case people are thinking, oh, this guy to be a Madridista, I'm definitely not. But yeah, I just thought like Modric and Kroos are obviously the glamour boys of that midfield. But I think as the years went on, a bit like it was a little bit like when Real Madrid had Makelele and they got rid of him and they were like, what are we doing? Why have we got rid of Makelele? And obviously some of the players were really angry. I think with Casemiro, as it went on, they didn't get rid of him and they were like, all right, this guy's like great. And I know like the fans love him. And he was sort of like a bit of a shithouse, but he was he seemed just quite calm about everything. He didn't like, he wasn't like Ramos where he always looked like angry and he had those sort of like chubby cheeks. And yeah, like, obviously he's gone into a madhouse at Man United. And I feel like he's sort of put a bit of a joke against his name. And I sort of wanted to just say how good he was, basically. Do you know what I discovered? Interesting fact about him this week. When he played at Sao Paulo, do you know his name isn't actually Casemiro? It's actually Cassie with an I, Miro. And they spelt his name wrong on the back of his shirt. And because it was his debut and he played well, he stuck with it for good luck.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah, I like that. I'm surprised I hadn't heard that.
Maybe he needs to change it back at Manchester United then, just for. Yeah,
if someone wants to double check that for me, because this does seem a bit mad to that. But yeah, like if it's one of those ones as well where like I think all these players, you do a sort of read up on them a little bit, just remind yourself, and you scroll down on Casemiro's Wikipedia page and see honors Real Madrid, and it's just crazy. As the same with many Real Madrid players of that sort of that he was brilliant, a really good footballer, like tough as well, but I think a better footballer than he was perhaps given credit for as well. So yeah, I couldn't really think. Mauro Silva was the other one. I thought, to be honest with you, I just can't remember seeing him play as much, so I went with Casemiro.
Yeah, I think between Casemiro and Sergio Busquets as well, it's sort of like really refined what it was to be a holding midfielder or a defensive midfielder in Spanish football at the time, and it was always an interesting battle between the two of them as well. So yeah, obviously we're a Spanish football podcast, so we'll always respect what Casemiro did and just say, fucking, you can see with the players that have left Manchester United in the last season how good they are. And I imagine if Casemiro did leave now, he'd probably turn into another superstar once again. But yeah, I didn't have Casemiro in my team. My team must be very, very weird compared to yours. Was there another attacking midfield option, Matt, that you wanted to bring up, or are you quite happy for me to maybe take a centre midfielder into the mix?
Well, I've got like a centre midfielder. But you go with yours. I've just spoken about Casemiro, and then maybe I can tell you my sort of number 8.
Well, the first one I've gone for is Rivaldo, but Rivaldo at Depor, because obviously we know he played for Barcelona. But as we did the other week, Paul, we looked at this, Depor side and what it meant, and Rivaldo coming into Deportivo La Coruña at the time when Bebeto was leaving, it looked like it was going to be a bit of a dark period. He came in for what did we say? Was it 26 billion pesetas or something? Oh no, sorry, 4 billion pesetas. It was 26 billion quid, and he just lit up the league with Depor. He was absolutely fantastic. 21 goals in his only season in Galicia. Some really stunning performances, and was part of the side that went on to go unbeaten in La Liga in 1996 as well. So really, really cool player. We don't have to talk about Rivaldo too much because he's just a legend, isn't he? But did he make any of your two sides, or is that unique maybe just for me?
He's my number 10.
He's on mine, yeah. And I put him ahead of the two midfielders, so like in a 10 role, yeah.
Yeah, well, I've got a theory that I still think, and obviously time might have made this theory, I don't know, more plausible. I think he's possibly one of the most overlooked Ballon d'Or winners of all time, where he's sort of forgotten about. He won it in 99, obviously. just he was I like he's one of the greatest one-footed footballers ever. I think he was just all left foot. He wore Mizuno, but he was just. I think the thing that went against him, especially because he had someone like Ronaldinho come in just after, and he's sort of in between Ronaldinho and Ronaldo. He just didn't seem to have much of a personality, and I think he was a bit cold for a Brazilian, I thought. So I think that goes against him as being like celebrated as much. And of course, it's compulsory to mention he possibly scored the greatest hat trick of all time.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right with that. If you used to like pigeonhole that Joga Bonito effect, you would never really necessarily put Rivaldo in there, but he was always just, brilliant to watch. And again, he was around at a time when, it was a football epiphany for me. It was an awakening for me. And he was one of the first ones you saw in that Brazil shirt, say like at, World Cup 1998, for example. So he was just flawless in this Depor side as well. So I'm glad we've all picked him because he's definitely going to go into that midfielder then. The other midfielder I've gone for, which I assume neither of you two have gone for because I am rogue this evening, I've gone for Juninho at Atleti.
Oh, I've got someone quite similar, I would say. So go on.
Well, for me, Juninho is, obviously I know him more from his time on loan at Middlesbrough and what he did there. But then when you start to look into his backstory and how he became, quite a substantial figure at, Atleti in his time there, he was absolutely brilliant. But just this diminutive sort of like small Brazilian who had a hell of a shot on him, scored worldies for fun. He was just a lot of fun. And, I look back at these videos in an Atleti shirt. I just think that is a man having a fun time. And, obviously went on to do the same for Borough, and he went back to Brazil with Vasco da Gama and Flamengo and places like that. But yeah, he was, don't get me wrong, this wasn't an all-beating, all-conquering Atleti side. I think they got relegated with him in the side. But he's just fun. He's one of my favourite Brazilians ever. So when I saw that I could stick him in this team, I was like rubbing my hands together going, great, that's my number 10.
And also not only relegated with Atleti, he got relegated with Middlesbrough as well, if I remember rightly. So right, he's a great player. To be honest with you, I sort of forgotten about him. That's a great shout. He's also, I remember, I'm sure this other guy might get at least a mention later, but in the Umbro Cup before, which was in 95 before Euro 96. It was sort of like a test tournament. He played up front with the Ronaldo, and Brian Robson's obviously England assistant manager. And I always wonder, did Brian Robson go, which one of them shall I take? Shall I have a go at that Ronaldo guy? I'll see if I can get him to Middlesbrough. I don't know whether he did or not. Who knows?
Well, like I say, with the national side as well, you'd think in this era when we did have, the players that we're talking about, the level of play that we're talking about, you'd think he would find it quite difficult to break into that, that squad. But he notched up nearly 50 caps for the national side. He was part of the World Cup winning squad in 2002 as well. So, he's also got a very nice trophy cabinet as well, including some, Palmos from Teesside that he may have become accustomed to. But I just thought it was good for a good mention there. But I think we're probably going to have to go with two midfielders because, Paul, I'm assuming that you said you went for 3-4-3, didn't you?
Yeah, but now that I'm looking at it again, the formation is probably more of a 3-2-3-2 in terms of natural shape and the best. But yeah, I'd originally wrote it as a 3-4-3. It doesn't change the personnel; it just changes the shape. That's all.
Can I throw out the other centre midfielder? Which
just
to compete with Juninho, because I actually think it's quite a similar player. I'd argue a better player, maybe not as fun a character, and perhaps a little bit overlooked, especially in the Atleti story. I've gone with Diego.
Yes, I've got him in my side as well.
Oh, brilliant. So I don't know where you've placed him, but really like the sort of footballer I love. Obviously, like he was part of that Santos partnership with Robinho. They sort of came together, and everyone knew about Robinho, but I don't know if you read World Soccer Magazine, you're like, actually, Diego's the one that's going to make it. And like he was great at Werder Bremen, didn't really work for him at Porto, which seems strange because, that's where people go to get lift off in Europe. And obviously he was replacing Deco. But yeah, him and Atleti, he's this sort of typical number 10, I guess. And he doesn't really play number 10 for them. Simeone, it's very early Simeone, makes him into a bit of a number 8, but like he tackles and he's in the middle and he pings passes about. He's like this hybrid number 10-8. And I just loved watching him play. He was he had that sort of number 10 energy, but in Simeoneified almost a little bit as well. And obviously like he helps Atleti win the UEFA Cup, which obviously gets that, or might have even been the Europa League then. Europa League, I'm guessing then. He sort of his big moment was at Juventus, and for whatever reason, it didn't work there. They don't perhaps appreciate the sort of, he was a bit more of a number 10 individual then. But yeah, I just really loved him. And so I thought he'd be a nice gap between Casemiro and Rivaldo. Him in the middle, I thought was a nice balance.
Yeah, I stuck him in there. Admittedly, I've put him on kind of like so I've gone for like a very narrow 4 across midfield with my other choice for the left midfield position kind of maybe lends itself to this, but I had Diego because he was just absolutely brilliant to watch, and again in an age when we sort of start to see the role of the Brazilian sort of ebb at this time. And he became, for me, one of the best to watch, especially during time with Werder Bremen and what he did in Germany. But when he got to Atletico Madrid, he was just unplayable at times. And he obviously won the Europa League, like you said, Matt, but he also helped them win La Liga for the first time in 18 years as well. So he's very decorated that way. And I saw a video of him recently returning to Atletico Madrid on his retirement, or his official retirement, I should speak. And they've just got some fantastic memories of him, really, really admired by Atleti fans, which is never an easy feat, really, is it? Considering the cult heroes that they've had. So for me, yeah, he's up there, despite how brief his stints in La Liga were.
Yeah, I don't want to be sacrilegious here because we all basically gushed over him in the Argentinian episode we did, but he's sort of similar to Riquelme, but arguably more dynamic. I don't think he's a better footballer than Riquelme, but he's in that similar mode. But obviously we talked about Riquelme was fun because he was quite languid and sort of slow, whereas Diego's had a bit more about him, we'll say.
Yeah. Paul, any nice words about Diego, please? I could stay on Diego all day. He was just
he's a great player. I don't know how widely known this is, but when he was at Werder Bremen, Mark Hughes was the city manager, and he wanted to sign him to play alongside Robinho that season. They couldn't agree a fee, but I think it was in the January they were trying to get him, whilst also at the same time trying to convince Kaká to come. So I think they were just trying to sign any Brazilian to keep Robinho happy. A
British manager did eventually sign him, though. I don't know if you guys can pull that one out of the bag.
Is this going to be someone like Steve Keane signed him for some Thai club or something like that?
You got halfway there with the name.
Bruce.
No. He signed, McLaren signed him for Wolfsburg. He was in the Wolfsburg. No, for Steve McLaren, definitely. After he'd won the league with FC Twente, he went there.
Yeah, that was it, isn't it? Yeah.
Great play, great McLaren.
Yeah, well, now he's rocking up in Kingston doing things on the international scene as well, isn't he? But yeah, clearly a man who recognises talent with Diego. So we've got a bit of a tie on here, for being perfectly honest. We've got 2 votes for Casemiro, we've got 2 votes for Diego, we've got 3 votes for Rivaldo. So I think we're going to have to go for Rivaldo. Does that mean we need a bit of a
I've got all 3 in my team.
Defensive impetus, or impetus isn't probably the right word, but well, let me give you my other midfielder, and then let's see if this coins out. My last choice in midfield was Denilson at Real Betis, just on the left wing. Again, the way he used to cut inside and the way that he used to just throw his legs around with step overs and stuff like that, he was great to watch, but obviously a bit of a Marmite character in terms of his performances. But
I think he also near enough bankrupt the club as well, didn't he? The signing. That's not his fault. That's not his fault, I should say.
A world record fee on him. I think it was something like 30 million quid at the time.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
He came in. He was just like, this is fun. And you know what? And I think it's the kit that does it for me as well. That Kappa kit with the Verde Blanco stripes. It was just brilliant to see.
Yeah.
I think people are in love with the idea of Danielson rather than the player Danielson. I think
that's a perfect summary there, Matt, actually. Yeah. I think.
Yeah.
Because when I was a kid, I was convinced he was the best footballer in the world. And then as I've got older, I'm going, I'm going to watch some stuff with Danielson. There's a few bits of highlights. And then I remember when we did Platini played for Kuwait, to sort of doing a bit of a deep dive into him. And there's just not a lot of substance there. He even seemed to give up. He basically seemed to go, he realized he was, although he was the most expensive player in the world at the time, he was like, I'm not good enough for this. I'm going to just chase money as long as I can. Because he had like I think he had a 10-year contract when he signed for Betis. Or certainly 8, something long anyway.
It was really, and obviously he was really, really young when he signed for Real Betis as well, which is, we've seen other Brazilians come on to Europe and maybe do it with less pressure. We've seen Rivaldo go to Depor before moving on to Barca. You've seen, R9 went to PSV before going to Barca and so on and so forth. So to come in maybe with that price tag, that world record fee as a 20-year-old, probably didn't help him do that. He did win a Copa del Rey, so it was trophy laden for him. But I think his influence, and he won a World Cup as well. I think his influence waned though for Real Betis because of the emergence of like players like Hakeem and people like that, and that kind of became a thing where I think it became a very Betis thing to do. Actually, is that you wanted to start promoting a lot more from their own cantera and realize actually, signing this boy for a world record fee, as you said, Paul, nearly fucking killed us off. So actually, let's start to promote these ones from in to try and balance the books a bit. But they unearthed some absolute gems as well. And, he sort of signified the end, really, for me, of Real Betis doing these really high-profile signings, didn't they?
Yeah, because they had Miguel Lopera, I think the guy was called, who named the stadium after himself, the chairman. I think it was him that signed them. I'm sure his definitely name was Lopera. I can't remember his first name, but yeah, it's a bit vain. Wanted to have the world record transfer next to his name. Poor Alan Shearer. He's only the record for a week, I think.
So my left field curveball of Danielson hasn't convinced us here. So I think we are going to go for Rivaldo's definitely in this side. I think we're going to obviously go with Casemiro from your guys' point just for that defensive solidity. And are we happy to go with Diego here, Paul? Have we convinced you that Diego should be in ahead of Mauro Silva?
I'm outvoted, aren't I? So
you might be. Well, there's me and Steve McLaren involved in this one, so I think you might have to take the L on this.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to go up against either of you two, and I certainly wouldn't want to go up against Steve McLaren and his hair island. So, yeah, well, we'll take that. If anyone sees me writing, what I'm doing is I'm keeping a tally of who we've actually gone with and what clubs they played for, just so that I can, when it gets to the end, I can turn around and say, look, there's a Madrid bias here, or there's a Barca bias here.
Yeah. Well, that's why I made sure to pick the Depor Rivaldo as well, because I was a bit like, I don't want it to look like there's too many, because they did all naturally gravitate towards, those big, 2 or 3 sides. But yes. So that's our midfield then. So let's just remind ourselves: Diego Alves in goal, Dani Alves, Luis Pereira, and Roberto Carlos at the back. We've got Casemiro with Diego and Rivaldo ahead of him. This is turning into a fun side.
Can I just point something out? This is exactly my team without Ed Nielsen so far.
These are convincing arguments, Matt, to be fair. And this is why you have the T-shirt, and why we've not turned up in our Brazil kits.
Yeah. I've got a clear in the next one I don't think you'll go for, so we'll see.
Well, let's go for the forwards then, and let's see how we've sorted out. Again, Paul, you've kind of mentioned your formation maybe a bit out of kilter here, or you've gone for something a bit rogue, but
Yeah.
that's Brazil for you.
Yeah, because what I did was because I had the extra. So I've actually got. I mean, should we just say it now? Is there any of you that don't have the original Ronaldo, the real Ronaldo in your team?
I've got the real Ronaldo in my team.
Yeah, of course. So let's just put him to one side. It's a given, isn't it?
Yeah.
And obviously Ronaldinho.
Ronaldinho's in my team as well.
Oh, Matt. Oh, right. Okay.
But I'll say I've purposely thrown in a curveball because I figured you two did an episode on Ronaldinho. You guys would pick him. The person I do not think is better than Ronaldinho. I just thought it'd be a fun pick.
I also have Bebeto in my team.
I did put down Bebeto given our episode the other week on Super Depot, but I had to go with my heart over my head on one of mine. So, as you said, I've picked him, man. I've got Ronaldinho on the left because Ronaldinho, is the embodiment of joyful football, and still now for me one of the greatest to ever do it. I've gone for R9 at Real Madrid. I appreciate he was, brilliant at Barcelona, and that season he had under Bobby Robson was incredible. But in terms of
put my hand on my head, what?
His time at Real Madrid, I just think that was when he was the epitome of R9. I don't think he was quite R9 at Barcelona as good as he was, because then he went on to Inter Milan to do a lot bigger stuff, I suppose. But
I mean, he was at Real Madrid for twice the length of time he was at Barcelona, near enough. I think I prefer him in a Barca shirt.
Is that where you're going as well? Am I being outvoted? Is it Barca Ronaldo?
Put my cards on the table here. The greatest season anyone's ever had in a football shirt is Ronaldo at Barcelona 96-97. I generally believe that. As a sort of just what the fuck is going on here? This is incredible. That's the first. Like, obviously, I was like 8, or 9, and we had in Wales. I don't know if you guys are aware of Scorio. I think you would be, Nick, obviously.
Yeah.
So for those that don't know, Scorio was like a sort of match of the day show on a Monday night, and they'd show the highlights of La Liga, Serie A, and I think it was the Dutch league. I can't remember maybe the French league. It was those 3 leagues, and we used to just stay up to see, because they'd always pick the Barcelona games just to see what Ronaldo did. He was just unplayable that season. He's the greatest striking performance of anyone ever, I think. And the Real Madrid thing, I just think. I think the Real Madrid thing, I just go, oh my God, like this guy is just broken. How is he still going? So I'd say that the real R9 was the Barcelona one. And arguably the start of Inter, he was obviously, I think people forget, they say he was injured at Inter, but I think he scored, it's either 24 or 25 goals in his first season in Serie A, when Serie A was, hard.
Yeah.
I think I'm just gonna use your own words against you, Nick, from the
I knew this
Galacticos podcast, where you said, and it was a real sad end for Ronaldo, wasn't it, when he was at Madrid? You could see game by game the life being drained out of him. Something to that effect, you said.
That's exactly what I said. I think in terms of when I look at him from my favourite perspective, like I said, I think I was a bit too young to truly appreciate him, watch him at Barcelona. I only watched back and the thing, and for me, it kind of goes back to the other side of it when he was a Galactico. That was, R9 was the personality. He was the person who shaved his head, with that weird fringe, and he, that does not surprise me. That Real Madrid shirt as well, with the Adidas logo and the black thing through the collar as well. It just. It was more iconic, but maybe I have more of affinity because he was playing with Zidane, he was playing with Beckham, he was playing with Raul, and maybe that's where my affection comes from. But I am very happy to be outvoted if we are going to pick R9 from Barcelona.
Well, no,
you are outvoted, yes.
I just figured we're picking R9, and it sort of spans both spells, but I just prefer his Barca thing. I wrote it down. I remember on the Argentinian episode, I give an honorable mention to Jorge Valdano, who is one of the greatest writers of Spanish football ever and a great striker. He's got one of my favorite quotes ever about Ronaldo in the Barcelona season, and he said, "He's not a man, he's a herd." Great line.
No, he was just at his pomp. He was unstoppable, and that did span across several different clubs. But it was it was a shame the way it did end for him at Real Madrid, as I said last week. So we'll go with R9, a youthful R9, a pre-injury R9 at Barcelona for our striking role. I assume we're going to go with Ronaldinho because we've picked him. I suppose the other winger I could throw into the mix for me, again, it's more of a heart over head, is Julio Baptista at Malaga, because Malaga fan, and he was there for a short time, but for a good time. Part of that Champions League side and such. He was just and he still has a very good connection with the club as well, which I really, really appreciate and I really, really like. But I don't see him maybe getting in over some of the other players that we've mentioned.
He was really good at Sevilla as well. He sort of made his name there, didn't he, as well? So
yeah.
With a Liga body of work, he does have a good body of work in the league.
Same with Real Madrid as well. Let's not forget, he went in at that time alongside, some of those big superstars as well when, they were looking to bring in, Cristiano Ronaldo and co. He held his own in that league as well. So, he was one for me. Have we got one more to throw into the mix here? Was it Matt? Was it you or Paul? Did you have another one or a couple?
I've got two.
You've got balloons?
You've got balloons as well. It must be really exciting.
I did that before. I did that, yeah. I've basically, because I've gone three up front and I've got sort of a left winger, sort of, and I'd say a more traditional wing. Actually, a guy I've put on the right but played on the left. One of my favorite footballers ever, and again, it's another one I think gets a bit of a bad deal these days, but I just absolutely loved watching him play. I think he's as comparable to Ronaldinho. I've got Neymar. I love Neymar. I play live twice. He would be in the top 5 players I've seen live. I saw him play from Brazil in the Olympics, and then Paul, I was at that Barcelona game where I think they won 3-1 at the Etihad.
Yeah.
I think Messi missed a penalty in the last minute.
That saves it. Yeah, that's it.
It was right in front of me, but Neymar in that game was, well, the three of them, it was the MSN. They were all amazing.
Yeah,
I just think Neymar gets I see like he did become a bit of a clown when he went to PSG, but he was really good there. That one year they got to the Champions League final. Barcelona, some of the stuff he was doing, I know it was a bit like Ronaldinho's obviously like this sort of, I'm not, it's not criticism of him, bit more like circus, sort of taking the mick and having a laugh, which is great. Whereas, I don't know, Neymar just had that bit more incisiveness about him, I always thought. And I don't know, I just thought he looked cool, obviously the Santos look is iconic. By the way, speaking of those two, I was going to bring this up because I thought we might have a Neymar Ronaldinho clash, and I love Ronaldinho, by the way, as well, just to put it there. But if anyone's bored one day and they want to watch one of the greatest games of football ever, when we did Platini played for Kuwait, another podcast they used to do a while ago, we did one of the choices. A guest came in was Santos 4, Flamengo 5, and it's basically Neymar against when he's a kid and Ronaldinho when he's old, and it's one. In Brazil, it's considered the greatest game of football of all time. It's unbelievable. I watched the highlights, and then we did the podcast, and I thought I found the whole game. If you're bored, and I think if you type it into Google, you'll find it. It's just a league game. It's unbelievable. The goalies are amazing. The goals, actually, Neymar gets the Puskas Award in that game. It's brilliant.
I think that's my working day sorted tomorrow. Rather than doing actual work, I'm going to be watching 90 minutes of that game instead. But I get your point in that about Neymar. I think in terms of talent and natural ability, he's up there with some of the greatest that have played. The thing that gets me with Neymar and being a Brazilian is that he knows he's good. And I think I don't always sense that with Brazilian players, that there is an acknowledgement that they are great, but there is a certain humility around how good they are as well.
My argument
with Neymar.
Sorry.
Go.
No, no. This is why I think I really like him as well, because I still think in the 2014 World Cup, there's not many players that have had so much pressure on them in any tournament, any league ever. And I thought he handled himself so well. So although he said he thought he was good, I sort of feel as a young man he was put on such a pedestal. And I actually think when he went to Barcelona, he does. I know he probably did have. Barcelona is a hell of a city to be someone who likes to party in, but he did seem more focused there. And I think obviously the thing that did it for him, he's amazing in the what is now called La Remontada, the comeback against PSG. And the thing that did it for him is he's like man of the match, and it's that famous photo of Messi, and he's sort of the image of that game, and supposedly that's the thing which perhaps he lost his humility a bit there, I'd argue. And
yeah,
I think he was quite level-headed from what I remember at Barcelona. But yeah, I still think if Brazil had won that World Cup and, he played in the semi-final and they hadn't lost 7-1, it'd be talked about as perhaps one of the best sort of individual
in that World Cup. He's carrying you can see he's carrying the weight of the nation on his shoulders, isn't he? And he's still very young there, actually, in terms of things. And I think when you talk about some of the greats that Brazil have had over the years anyway, it's always going to be massive expectations for any good player. I think when he was at Barca, he was unbelievable to watch, for everything, even like when he didn't have the ball, and you were spoiled because you also had Messi in the team and you also had Suarez, who between them they'd get 100 goals between three players in one season, didn't they? I think it was at the 2015 season, I think it was, or 2014 season, and it was just was it 2015? I think it was 2015.
Yeah.
Anyway, but he did clearly sort of, in a lot of people's eyes, went off the radar a bit when he was at PSG, because it wasn't being showcased how good of a player he was. And it was only when it came to like the 2018 World Cup, after he'd spent a couple of years playing in France, where you were kind of reminded of like, in there is one of the best natural talents that we've ever seen. And it's just, unfulfilled potential, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a big, that's probably it on the head as well, in terms of that. He did win stuff obviously with Barcelona and stuff like that, but the fact that he made the move he did, he's obviously ended up in Saudi Arabia at a relatively young age, and it's nice to see him back at Santos as well now. But he's far past his power from where he was a few years ago. The thing where he booked off he always got injured for his sister's birthday. I always find a bit weird as well. But
it's only like Ryan Giggs with Wales, though, isn't it? Really?
I suppose. But do you have another one, Paul, just to throw into the mix?
So I'd had Bebeto that I'd mentioned before, but Neymar was on my team sheet. Remember, I have a very unorthodox formation, but Bebeto was the other one that I'd mentioned.
No, Matt, did you have one more? Did you?
Yeah, I can see the time's ticking by, so I'll be really quick with it. I was partly in response to your Super Depot episode. I didn't think he got as much of a starring role. The guy Danielson should have been Jalminha. I just thought he's sort of the tricks, which I think Danielson, obviously they're around the same time. They go to La Liga. Jalminha, bit of a bad boy, probably should have won the World Cup with in 2002, but they say because he headbutted Javier Irureta in the weeks before the World Cup, Scolari didn't call him up in the end, which ended his Depot career. Yeah, just brilliant, just really good fun. Definitely a good YouTube footballer. Lots of, there's the famous, what they call it, the Lambretta against Real Madrid. He flicks the ball over his head. If anyone speaks Spanish or can handle Spanish subtitles, there's an excellent documentary the movie star did in the past year called, I think it's called Puro Jalminha, and it's all about his time at Super Depot, and he goes back to A Coruña. But just a really fun footballer, and he was sort of my counterpoint to like Ronaldinho. But like I said, I don't think he's as good as Ronaldinho. I just wanted to give him a shout out, since I thought he deserved a bit more on the Super Depot episode. You focused on Bebeto a lot, which is fair enough, and I appreciate there are a lot of characters to focus on in that Super Depot team. So I thought I'd highlight him a bit more.
No trouble at all. Yeah, I think similarly to maybe not similarly to Neymar, so say, but I think there maybe some aspects of him which weren't as fun as the football is probably where I'd put that on. And that incident with Irueta is probably up there with, yeah, probably cost him a World Cup. Absolutely no two doubts about it. I bet he thinks about it every single day, to be fair. But yeah, I think that sounds good. Well, I think we're maybe going to discount Julio Baptista from this argument. I think I've had one in every line of this team where we've just gone, why have you picked him, Nick? That was a waste of a vote. He can join Fabio Aurelio and Denilson in the rubbish pile. I think obviously we're going to go with R9 at Barcelona as our central striker. I suppose in terms of what you guys have actually picked and what we voted for, there's an argument to say we've got 2 votes for Ronaldinho and 2 votes for Neymar. So do they both get in this side?
I think so. But I think we need 4 players, don't we? Because I think we've gone 3-3. So you need 4.
So far, we've got Alves in goal, Alves at right back, Pereira at centre half, Carlos at left back, Diego, Rivaldo, Casemiro, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho. So 1 space left.
So you can either fill in I think you go with the Neymar, Ronaldinho, Ronaldo up front, and then I don't know. You've got a wild card to throw somewhere.
Can we bring Fabio Aurelio back out of the bin, please?
Yeah, I was going to say
nervous laughter ensues.
I feel like there is someone we should have. I feel like there's one of the ones you said. Who else did we say up front? I don't think Jalminha should be there. That was me just having a bit. No, I think to be honest, the one person none of us have mentioned who I would pick as the other striker and have 2 behind. We've not even used the word Romario. And
yeah, of course, Romario.
Yeah. Played with Ronaldo and Bebeto, and I think
so. On the piece of paper I've got, which has various scribblings out, Romario was one of them on there.
Okay.
Replaced by Rivaldo, then replaced by Ronaldo, and then I left him out to put because I thought to myself, oh, I've not even put Ronaldinho in here. So yeah.
Well, the other one as well. So again, I kind of ended up unlike you guys, sticking away from some of the controversial characters because I was a bit like, I don't know if I can mention them. But the other one I had in my back of my mind was Robinho at Real Madrid as well. In terms of that young player coming through, that Real Madrid anaesthesis to Neymar potentially, but never quite worked out for him to that level. But
I've just really worked out for him wherever he went, to be honest with you. He was an absolute, statement signing for City, and he gave us half a season of exciting moments. But the guy, he is not to offend any Robinho fanboys, but he's a massive flop wherever he's gone, in my opinion.
Just to get a proper Robinho, then again, another name we've not even mentioned, weirdly, and I sort of forgot to mention him, Vinicius.
Yeah. I thought he was a bit too modern for this nostalgic podcast.
And Rodrigo. I thought
the same with Coutinho as well. Obviously, he didn't live up to the price tag at Barcelona, but in terms of a player, he's his time at Liverpool is certainly some of my favourite I've seen of a footballer in the last 10 years. But
I'd say he was a scorer of great goals rather than a great goal scorer, though. I mean, some of the ones that it was always that sort of like curved finish into the top bins. He was class for that, but.
I'm half tempted just to say, just because he features, we talked about the airport advert. Obviously, there was the cage advert for the 2002 World Cup. Denilson made it into that team, so maybe we just chuck Denilson in for a laugh.
Well, listen, if we chuck him in, that gives us one more team's worth of one more team's representation in this, or one more club's representation.
We go 4 up front with Denilson on the left, Neymar on the right, and Ronaldinho behind Ronaldo.
Yeah, that works.
We're gonna have to do some shoehorning in here.
I mean, it works in this sense. It wouldn't work at all on the football field.
Yeah. Our Argentine 11 is going to absolutely have a fucking field day with this Brazilian. We're going to set them up at this rate.
We don't even need to discuss that now, do we?
Yeah. To be fair, the only other one that again, just looking at the time here, not to because we could do this all night. But the one that was in that Nike cage advert that hasn't been mentioned was Silvinho.
Yeah.
Another left back that we could have had.
Or just go, look into the future and let's try and jump the gun. Should we put Anthony in there?
Oh yeah, could be the way he's forward in Spain at the moment. He could definitely be a contender,
Definitely
couldn't he?
have more
But
impact than Nielsen.
yeah. Yeah,
I'll leave it to
imagine
you
if we
guys.
could make a whole 11 of left backs. I think we could. Just thinking of the names we've mentioned, we could have a whole 11 of left backs if we really wanted to, but that would leave out some quite
You know
important
what?
players.
I
wouldn't
think
it?
for balance, I think the best way to get the balance out of this, because we talked about him a lot as well, alongside Casemiro, Mauro Silva, with Diego
Yes.
and Ronaldo in front, and then three up front. That would
So
be
are we dropping the Nilsson for that then?
I think it's up to you. Do you want the kamikaze one or the more sensible one?
Let's go with a more sensible one so that we can still maintain some air of professionalism.
And because then.
Yes, exactly. So that would be a 3-2-2-3 formation.
Yes.
Cool. Which is still mad in itself, let's be perfectly honest. But I like it. I'm a fan of it. So yeah. Paul, just want to read us out that team just so we can end and avoid all this confusion.
So yeah, this notepad's absolute chaos at the moment. But we've got Diego Alves representing Valencia in goal. We've got Dani Alves representing Barcelona at right back. Luis Pereira representing Atleti. Roberto Carlos, Madrid. Diego, Atleti. Rivaldo, Depor, not Barca, you said.
Mm-hmm.
Casemiro, Madrid. Mauro Silva, Depor. Neymar, Barcelona. Ronaldo, Barcelona. And Ronaldinho, Barcelona. So
I like that. I think that's got more of a chance now.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, the Diego Rivaldo thing comes after Mauro Silva and Casemiro, in case people think we play.
Yeah. It's all right. We'll put an 11 up on
those getting stuck in defensive midfield.
Yeah.
Well,
to creatively put a graphic up to show a visualization of what we mean once we've deciphered my handwriting.
The madness that is this Brazil 11, but I think that comes, as we said, with the essence of being Brazilian as well. Is that I would look at that formation and say, well, actually, that side probably could do something just by keeping the ball away, and taking the piss essentially, like they do in the advert. So
it would be very marketable.
Mauro Silva and Casemiro are doing the job in that centre midfield, I think, as well, to calm things down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, that was our Brazilian 11. So like Paul says, we'll get a graphic out there. And if you want to send us some of your suggestions, anyone who we think might have missed out, then just do let us know on social media, El Partido _ES. So I'll say thank you for Matt for joining us once again. It's always a pleasure to have you on the podcast. You've got obviously some fantastic work that has been done in the last few weeks since we last spoke to you. You've got more stuff coming up forward. Where can people find you if they want to hop over to Lost Boyos?
Yeah, so Lost Boyos, we've done 11 episodes now. Episode 11's out tomorrow, which does have a Brazil link. We did have someone that played against Philip Coutinho and played in Brazil, an 18-year-old Englishman. So there's a bit of a story there. I'll leave it at that. It's on all the usual podcast places. If you search Lost Boyos, and if not, try Lost Boyos, a football travel podcast. It's on Spotify, iTunes, etc. You can find her on Twitter at Lost Boyos Pod, and you can find me at Matt Lost Boyo on Twitter and on Instagram if you want to see photos of Spain and Spanish football.
Sounds absolutely delightful. And I'll say thank you again to you, Paul. I will see you again next week.
Yeah, all the best. Enjoyed it again.
Yes, definitely. And I'm going to go home now and basically knock up this 11 somehow, which will be quite fun. But I'll say thank you all for listening once again. We'll see you again soon, and hasta luego.